Welcome to the Fit Podcast. I got that. Welcome to the Fit Podcast. Freedom and truth, where truth is taught and freedom is lived. Thank you so much again for joining us. We are in week 4 of our series. This is week 4, part 4 of our Kingdom series, and we're learning a lot, and we're studying a lot of information. And like I said, this is part 4, and it's called "The Attitudes of the Kingdom," introducing instructions for kingdom living. And we are, like I said, we're having some fun on this podcast.
We
And
are.
you can see, I have my friend, my brother. He's still here with me.
I'm still here.
This young man, he's still hanging out with me.
I'm here on my own
4 weeks
accord.
in, and I'm so thankful that you're here. And so, let's give a round of applause for our brother Jared there. All right. Proud there, boy.
That's good to be here. I just want you all to know I'm
Yeah.
here.
Thank you.
On my own accord, I'm here.
Yeah.
They didn't lock the door or anything. I'm here willingly.
That's
And
right.
it's fun. We're learning a lot.
See, that's it. Because young people, and in nowadays in the world, man, it's so hard to get them to pause for a minute because they're always on the go. But to see you took some time out and come and hang out with us on the podcast, so thank you so much for that. Well, Jared, what are we going to talk about today? What are we talking about today on part 4? Where are we at? Tell me.
We're back in Matthew.
Okay.
And this time we just made it out of the Beatitudes, and now we're in Matthew 5:13. So I can talk about the salt of the earth. And I'll read the scripture.
Okay, let's do that then. Okay.
Ye are the salt of the earth. But if the salt have lost its savior, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under the foot of men. It's powerful right there.
Powerful.
Powerful.
Go ahead and give us your thought on that. Tell us what you're thinking about that. What comes to mind about that?
Well, this verse, when I read it, a few things come to mind.
Okay.
One of that being the role of salt. So we know salt, it's used to either preserve things or to enhance the flavor of something. And so, to me, this verse, it points out that, how we as Christians, previous verses of talking about us getting closer to God and longing after God and enhancing our relationship. But now we're getting into how we should interact with other people and interact with the world. And so when you hear this salt in this verse and how it enhances flavor, I think it's meaning that we should enhance the people around us, the world around us.
Right.
And we should also preserve, as salt does, preserve the moral integrity of the world and the Christian values within the world. And so these are the main 2 things that pop out at me when I read this verse.
Wow. Very good. Very good. Hey, you hear it from a bright young man. I couldn't say any better what he's talking about. The salt. When I think about, I'm going to tell you a little story. Growing up in the Bahamas, if you know me, I got a lot of Bahamian stories. Because if you don't know where I'm from, that's where I'm from, the Bahamas. Born in Nassau, grew up in Cal Island. I left Cal Island at the age of between 14 and 15. I moved from Cal Island to Nassau, and then on to the United States. But I want to talk about salt. How important salt is? Very important ingredient that we use in life. It's used for many different reasons. It's mainly used in food, but they use it for other things as well. And they use it to help with the skin and different things and all that stuff. Well, in the Bahamas and Cat Island, that was one of the items that we didn't purchase. We never bought salt from the store. We never had to. And the reason why we didn't have to, because we had what we call a salt pond. It had a channel where the water from the ocean filled this pond up in certain times of the year, and basically in the winter time, springtime, this pond fills up with salt water. And then in the summertime, in the dead heat of the summer, the water evaporates because it's so hot. It's not raining, and the water evaporates. And it's usually around in the middle of July. In the middle of July in Cat Island, and then we need to gather salt. We need salt so we can my grandmother can cook with it, and you do this once every couple of years. So three, say 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, we went to the salt pond, and we call it raking salt. And the salt pond has been there, it's still there to this day. It's been there for hundreds of years. That set up, and people on that island, they've been raking salt for hundreds of years, and so it's a big producer of salt. So we go there early in the morning and we rake the salt. The reason why we do that early in the morning, because when the sun comes up, if you're in that salt pond at say about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, you're in that salt pond and the sun is hitting you and it's hitting that salt, your skin begin to burn. It just starts. It's not a good feeling. So we have to go when it's very early, very cool, and rake the salt. And the family, we use that salt to do many different things. One of the main things that we did, like Elder Jared said, is that we use it because Brother Jared, we didn't have, because growing up with my grandmother, and you probably didn't know this story unless you hear it in one of my podcasts. We didn't have a refrigerator
Mhm.
growing up. This is from zero till I was like 14, going on 15. We didn't have a refrigerator. My grandmother didn't own one. Why? One of the reasons she didn't own one, because we didn't have electricity on the island. The only people who had electricity were the people who can afford the generators and stuff like that to generate electricity. So we didn't have it. So we had to go to those methods, like what Jesus is talking about, to preserve our fish and stuff like that when we catch the fish, so we can have fish to eat down the road,
Mm.
and stuff like that. So that's why we gather a lot of salt and use it for different reasons and stuff. And some of them use it to with the purpose to for the skin and stuff, to clean the skin and stuff like that. And but now you hear Jesus talking about salt.
Right.
He's talking about salt, and he's saying, you and I, we, the audience he was talking to. He said, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt lose its flavor,
Mhm.
how shall it be seasoned? It's then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled on underfoot by man. So it it can become useless.
Mhm.
It could become useless. So now Jesus, now how do I take that situation, stuff that you salt fish with, um, meat? They used to do a lot of in the Bahamas, beef, no, beef and fish. They did a lot of beef and fish and pork to preserve them. You can go in the store and still buy this today. Stuff that was preserved by salt and stuff like that. But Jesus said, if it lose, he said, we are the salt. We are the salt. What do you mean by that? When you say we are the salt, we are the salt of the earth. What you get from that?
From that, I understood that as being the salt, I mean, salt has its purposes, but in all the examples you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
salt was used to do something onto something else,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be
Mm-hmm.
to preserve the meat, to
Mm-hmm.
clear the skin.
So in other words, it had to come in contact with something, or
Exactly, exactly. And so when
mm,
Jesus says we are the salt, to me that means not we're not the salt for ourselves, but the salt for other people.
got it,
And so
got it.
as we're learning and as we're becoming believers and as you read the Beatitudes that we went through and
Yeah,
we become closer with God and we become, of God, child of God, as we mentioned, we become that salt for other people to enhance their lives.
So that means you have to come in contact with other people.
You have to.
In order for this salt to be effective,
You have to.
you have to come in contact. Just like the salt has to come in contact with the meat or the fish and stuff like that, in order for its effect to take over.
Right.
So the meat, based on like how we talk about the meat and the fish, based on the meat and the fish contact with that salt to determine how that fish is going to be or that meat is going to be down the road.
Exactly.
Because if there was no salt was used, then there was a decay was going to set in, right?
Yep.
And you can't eat a decayed meat,
decayed
fish. You can't eat it, so you got to preserve it to the exact same way its present condition. You got, in other words, you got to trap its present condition and take that into the future with you.
Right.
Right.
And I'll add, I mean, you can eat decayed meat, but look what it will do to you. Look at the effects it'll have on you.
Go.
And so, as a salt, as you mentioned, we're trying to preserve it so that these effects, we don't have to witness these effects or experience these effects of eating.
So, in other words, I'm thinking, my mind is turning here, brother Jared. So that means if we're not the salt of the earth, if we don't become the salt of the earth for people around us, we're going to have a lot of people who are decaying spiritually around us.
Definitely. I would agree 100%. That's why we need Christians, in the church, of course, but also in other positions of power, to be politics. You need Christian or dentists, doctors.
Yeah.
You need us to be everywhere so we can prevent this decay.
Yeah.
And we can be the salt for other people.
Because you can be a smart, decaying person.
Right.
You can have all the degrees in the world.
Right.
But if that's salt, if you're not touched by that salt, spiritually you're decaying, even though you have all these things you accomplish in life, all these degrees and all these different things. You've been there, done that, did this, but you're decaying spiritually. You're saying, like you said, doctors, lawyers, they need our salt.
Right.
Would you agree?
They need it.
They need our salt, because if we don't give them our salt, even though they have all this great accomplishment, they are still decaying spiritually. You agree?
I would agree. And I think with being salt, because there comes a huge responsibility, because as salt, or imagine if you use salt, but when someone used salt, it didn't have the taste of salt, or it enhanced the flavor. And so as Christians, I think our reputation and witness is so important, because if we say that we're the salt and we're being these ambassadors like we talked about, but they see us and we're not acting like salt, we're not being as we should be, they may have a different view of what salt is, or they're not really salt, they're not what they're supposed to be. And so just maintaining your witness and your reputation is important if you're going to claim, or if you're going to be the salt you're supposed to be.
Gotcha. Now, he said also, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? So, how can we lose our flavor? What do you think? What do you think when he says that? How can we lose our flavor? What comes to mind?
I think a little bit of what I just mentioned about, not representing the things of God, representing the things of Jesus.
Okay.
And so I think once you lose these things, you're no longer salt. Or you're salt, but the salt that doesn't have the power behind it.
Yeah.
You're salt in name,
you're
but
still salt, but no power.
Exactly. You're salt in name, but you're not salt because you don't have the effects or properties of salt. And so I think not representing Jesus and God and his belief in the beliefs, there within, that can cause us to lose our flavor.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. You're on it 100%, because one way, in the natural sense, to lose, if you season your pot or whatever, you're cooking some rice,
right?
And like one of my favorite meal I like to cook, side dish, so to speak, is what I grew up on: some nice peas and rice, pigeon peas and rice.
Okay.
The Jamaicans say rice and peas.
Rice and peas.
In the Bahamas, we say peas and rice.
Peas and rice.
So you can offend a Jamaican by saying peas and rice. When you go in a Jamaican store, a Jamaican restaurant, You have to say rice and peas,
Rice and
so you
peas.
to avoid not offend them. So, but for me, if I want to season my pot right, I have to put the right amount of salt in there. If I don't put the right amount in there, then I'm not gonna get the taste, the flavor that I'm trying to get. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Because of the effect of the salt is not as effective what I want because it was too little amount in proportion of what I'm trying to season. And I say that because we try to take the little effect that we have and we put ourselves in a situation where we're not going to be able to be effective. We're not going to be able to season the people around us. They're still going to decay, or it still won't have no flavor because we're not growing in our faith.
Right.
We're not growing in our obedience, like you talk about, and we're not growing. So when we're around people, we're not as effective. They, in a sense, is more fresh than seasoned. You taste when you taste your pot, and you kind of get a little spoon and you taste it and you say, okay, you need a little bit more salt. Just put a little bit more salt. You know what I'm saying? And then tell you say, and they say, that's it. It's perfect. When you get to that point where it's perfect, you got the right stuff now. But people don't say, you know what, I need to grow in this area. I need to grow so I can help people. And they just try to do things just on a whim or try to be effective with very little. You know what I'm saying? You don't know a whole lot about the Bible. You're not praying. You're not spending time in prayer. You're not spending time in your word, but yet you're trying to go out there and preach, or you're trying to go out there and act like you know it. You can do it. You can. That brother, he could preach, but all he's doing is making noise. Just because you're making noise doesn't mean you could preach. It got to be something seasoned.
Right.
What's coming out of your mouth has to be something that is effective, that the audience is changing. They're actually being flavored by what you're saying. You see what I'm saying? Or you can, if you're not doing it right, you can mess their lives up.
Oh, I agree.
Or you can do too much to them, and then you go taste that rice or that meat. You're like, ooh, you got too much salt. Too much salt. This don't taste that good. You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree.
Or I got very little. You gotta do it God's way, and you gotta be, in order to be effective, you have to make sure your flavor, the salt, is equally proportioned to what you're seasoning. You know what I'm saying? If you want to enjoy it. But because a lot of people in nowadays, they just say stuff to people and it has no flavor. You know what I'm saying? I can have a friendly conversation with you. I can talk to you. And when you walk away from me, you could feel better you could feel better. You could feel more encouraged, more inspired to do, greater things. Or I could come with no flavor, no salt, and try to break you down. You see what I'm saying? Try to break your life down, and then you walk away from me, man. I don't want to be around that guy anymore because he doesn't make me feel good when I'm around him. I don't make me feel better. Even when he doesn't, he make me feel worse than I feel now. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
If someone is in sin and you trying to help them come out of sin, there's a different approach. It takes a different flavor, right? It's a different flavor. You gotta be right with the right amount of salt.
Right.
And you don't want to put too much salt, not too little salt, because it's a different approach. It's a different approach. You have to do things in accordance to what the scripture is telling you, because you don't want to become ineffective. That's what Jesus is talking about, being ineffective. You're not even effective. There's no fruit from what you're doing. You're damaging people. Be careful with that. What do you think?
No, I think those are many great points. And I think just to add to that, there's, like you said, there's different approaches, different ways to be effective. And if you look at the salt that we have today, there's many different types of salt. There's sea salt, there's Himalayan salt, there's, the iodized salt.
Yeah.
And so these different salts, you use them for different things, or you can use them for different things.
Yeah.
And so different approaches. And sometimes someone may need some Himalayan salt and not the sea salt.
Right.
Sometimes they may need the sea salt. And so it's not a big thing to worry about because God and Jesus, they will lead you
Yeah.
to the right approach, the right
Yeah.
method.
Yeah.
But there's definitely different methods. And
So in other words, you have to stay in touch with God. You got to do this stuff out of God, not out of yourself, right?
And then just to add to one point that you mentioned about, not praying or not reading your Bible and, not using that salt that you are. If you don't use salt for a long enough time, it'll get clumpy. It'll stick together. And I've seen this, my own life.
Yeah.
You turn it over and you try to take it out and it won't move because it's so clumped together. And you have to unclump it with your hands, use your hands to unclump it. That just goes to what you were saying. If we don't use the salt that we are, after a while, we'll become clumpy.
Yeah.
And it will take some time to get us unclumped.
Yeah.
But we just have to be the salt that we are, but also be in contact with people.
Yeah.
Not forgetting where we came from and how there's some salt that helped us become who we are.
That's right. Yeah.
But just being in contact with people, working hard for people and helping people out. And
that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I agree, Brother Jared. You can, like Jesus said, you can lose your flavor. The flavor can be lost. You could just be a box of salt with no flavor.
Exactly.
Just a hard rock. And when you become that hard rock, like that rock type salt, if you don't, like you said, when growing up in the Bahamas, the salt, they come like they were like more like in little cubes and stuff like that. They weren't like fine like you see it. They were more in little cubes. So you have to like break it up. So my grandmother would have to put it like in a bag and beat on it to break those cubes up, make them as fine as possible. So when you pick them up, so you can know the right amount. And so it's a process. This is a process. There's some clumps, like you said, there's some things in our lives that are hard, they're squared and everything. And then you got to go to the word and let the word kind of break that things up, break it up. So when you flavor people, you're not throwing rocks at them. You're putting something that, that's not hurting them. You know what I'm saying? Can you imagine dropping some rocks on your head? What is that? That's salt. You know what I'm saying? He said, you're supposed to feel like that. Why is my head bleed? Like you just drop a rock on my head. But you just sprinkle a little salt on them, help them out, enhance them. You know what I'm saying? Make them feel better about themselves. Make her feel better about themselves. Because the world is beating our young people up. The older people, you've seen people are dying. They're taking their lives and stuff like that. And it's because we're missing the right flavor. They got the wrong flavor. This flavor that they have is killing them. You know what I'm saying? So they need the right flavor, and they need the flavor that Jesus gave us. Would you agree?
I would agree. And if you said too much, it can be bad. I remember one time I was making some cookies, and I wasn't using salt, but I mixed powdered sugar and flour up. So instead of I said 3 cups of flour, I put 3 cups of powdered sugar, and the cookies came out terrible. It was horrible. Oh, they were horrible.
Did you eat it?
I couldn't eat it. Couldn't eat it.
You couldn't
eat it. But that just shows you the importance of salt. Importance and putting the right amount and making sure you're dealing with salt. You're not dealing with other things.
That's right. Very good. Well, you heard it. You heard it from a very bright young man. We talked about it. Pray that we dissect it. And you can do some more work to it. Flavorful to the community, not being detrimental to the community. You can actually help people with flavor. You can think about how you talk to people. Think about how much you encourage. Think about when you talk to them, do you give them 8 negative things and 2 positive? Or do you do the opposite? Share 8 positive or 9 positive things, and you want to help them get better. You share that 9 positive thing, and you just share that 1 negative thing, so that they could take a look at, and then the 9 positive thing would encourage them to keep going. So think about those, how we can flavor the community, how we can flavor each other, we can flavor our brothers and sisters, so that we can allow each other to grow and get stronger and get more faithful to God. So continue, like I said, continue to share our page, continue to like our page, because we want to keep talking about these information. We want to keep talking about the truth, because the truth is very important, because Satan is out there trying to put something out there that looks like the truth. And I talked about this, that something that looks like the truth, but it's not the truth at all. He wanted to look as close to the truth as possible so you can be deceived by it. But we're here to tell you the exact truth. And our truth that we talked about today was the truth about salt. The physical salt and the spiritual salt. Think about those. Think about what you can do to season the lives of other people. Thank you for sharing our page, liking our page. Thank you for entertaining us and putting up with us. You know, we have some fun here. You hear us laughing, and we thank you. Thank you. Put some comments in there. Let us know your thoughts on some of the things that we're sharing. You can also put some comments in there if you want us to talk about some other topics in the Bible. We'll also consider those as well. Again, thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next podcast.